Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show, and please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Dr. Jennifer Forristal. She is here to talk to us about the umbrella effect. Before we invite Dr. Jenn into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Adventures of Harry and Friends, the wonderful picture book series written by Sarah Belisa Tucker. Does your child throw frequent tantrums? Do they have to win at everything they try? I Quit is a hugely popular book with parents who are now experiencing the same thing with their kids. You can get your copy today on Amazon or at Barnes & Noble and help your kid become more resilient. There are 7 books in this series. They're all fantastic. People all over love these books. You want to check them out today. The Adventures of Harry and Friends by Sarah Belisa Tucker. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by A Little Love. It's the latest in the Big God book series written by Andrea and Gabe Olson. A Little Love is a real-life story to take your children on a fun reading adventure to explore the miracles of God and see sides of gods you didn't believe were there. It's an educational and entertaining read, so your kids will both love it and learn from it. Here's some of the things that people are saying about the Big God books. Can't wait for more. We gave this book to our kids for Christmas, and they have picked it up to read every night since. The illustrations are fabulous, and the message of God's miracle for the church in this book is easily comprehended by both of my kids. It gets them asking and talking about miracles God has done for others. We love this book. We can't wait for more. Check it out today. You can go to thebiggodbooks.com to learn more about A Little Love and more about the Big God book series by Gabe and Andrea Olson. Join us right now from right outside of the beautiful city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. One of my favorite places in the world. Our guest is here today to celebrate the umbrella effect. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. Please welcome to the show Dr. Jennifer Forristal. Hey, Dr. Jenn, how are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. Monday morning, I've had my coffee and I'm ready to go.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Now, first off, you are a doctor. Tell us a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. Yeah. I started my career as a naturopathic doctor and specializing in pediatrics and specifically pediatric mental health. I think what we've been really noticing in medicine over the last decade is that when it comes to mental health, it used to be very predictable who would be struggling. And now we're seeing that many, many kids who we would never suspect are coming in and really struggling with their coping skills and the way to get through. So, the umbrella effect is part of a bigger mission for me to educate schools, students, parents, how we can learn to anticipate that life is going to be challenging at times and really build those important skills in advance of needing them so that, when life gives us a rainy day, we have an umbrella of coping skills that we can take that on, and we're not at the mercy of every time the weather changes for us. So.
Well, I like that, and there's a lot that I want to jump into. And first, I just want to talk a little bit more about naturopathic medicine. My son was greatly helped by a naturopathic doctor. When we hear, I think, I don't know if it's just here in the States or if it's just recently, but some people, when they hear naturopathic doctor, they're like, this is woo-woo stuff with, like burning incense and, dancing around a flame and all that. Can you tell us a little bit more about naturopathic medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely ties into the umbrella effect, because when we talk about what keeps somebody well, there's all your coping skills, but there's also what's happening in your body under your umbrella of coping skills. It gives you the energy to be able to take on whatever is going on for you. So the basics of nutrition, when are you eating? Are you eating at the right times and the right things? Sleep, exercise, stress management, all these things are not in any way woo-woo. They're the fundamentals of what keeps us well, that allows us to, thrive at our best. No matter where you're coming from, there's always things you can start to optimize and work on so that you and your specific child can optimize who they are and how they're doing in life. So naturopathic medicine really aims to get at the core of well-being, to look at all those different variables, and then where possible, use more natural interventions to treat and address the root cause of illness instead of, putting a Band-Aid on a headache. I mean, certainly I take the odd Advil for a headache when I need to. However, a lot of times, a child in my practice might be having headaches because their blood sugar is low, or they're low in magnesium, or there might be some underlying cause that we can identify and help that child to fix the problem rather than just Band-Aid it.
Why do you think we've gotten to the point now in medicine, and it's different in Canada, but I don't know how much different, but I know here in the States, you go to your doctor and you can expect to sit down with your doctor for maybe 7 minutes. And typically, when you go in with an issue, you'll typically walk out with some kind of prescription. As opposed to sitting down and having a conversation and where are you? What's your lifestyle like? What are you doing? Are you sleeping enough? Maybe you can do these things. Maybe you can exercise. Maybe you can change your diet before we give you this drug that is going to change your body in an artificial, I don't know if that's quite the word, but in a less natural way.
Yeah. I mean, I have many, many great friends and colleagues who are medical doctors, and conventional medicine, I think, has in some ways robbed doctors of the ability to connect with their patients and really understand what's going on with them. Now, I think, as you said, you have a few minutes. There's just no way to get to the root cause of every patient that you see in that system. Doctors need time with patients in order to really learn what's happening with them. And I remember actually I was working with a medical doctor at the beginning of my practice. And after a couple of weeks, we were learning about each other and each other's practices, because I think he also had some of the impression that naturopathic medicine can be a bit woo-woo and, out there. And at the end of a couple of weeks, he said to me, "Oh, I understand. You get to spend time with your patients. That's what's different about us. You have time to, not just tell them, here's a diet to lower your cholesterol, go follow the pamphlet, but actually talk to them about, okay, what are you eating now, right? How can we tweak what you're doing to actually create a diet that you're willing to follow, that you can do, that slowly takes you from where you are into a healthier state?" So I think it's a variable of time, to be honest. I think there's amazing doctors out there in all specialties. And I just think medicine is about a relationship with a patient and getting to know them and, what makes them tick. I think, and it allows you to uncover something that might have been very obvious, but you just would never think to ask unless you had the time to really interview somebody and understand.
Yeah. So important. When I was growing up, I had the same pediatrician knew me from birth till I was 20, 21 years old. And because I had allergies, so I had to see him all the time. So I had a great relationship with my pediatrician, and I've had the same why is my mouth not working? I've had the same primary care physician for the last 30 years. So I know even within my own family, I'm really odd. You know,
Yes,
because
very much so.
Most, you know, my daughter's 25 and she's had, you know, a couple of primary care doctors, and my wife's had a few. How did we get to this place where doctors aren't given the time to sit and develop those relationships?
You know, if I have to be truthful about that, I think it's that the volume of people feeling unwell, especially stress. Like I would say probably at the root of 90% of what's happening with my patients, young and old, is stress, right? I think the way that we're living our lives right now, the foods that we're choosing, we don't have time to grow that food anymore and prepare it in a thoughtful way. Everybody's moving fast and everybody's under a lot of stress and making poor choices. And so we're unwell. As a population, we're unwell, and we don't have it's an unsustainable way of medicine, right? I think part of the issue is that most people need to take back control of their health and their time and their stress and what they're doing, right? And start to really think about themselves as their doctor. Like I think of a person, I think of myself as my own primary care provider. My doctor is a consultant that I go to when I reach a limit in what I can do for myself. But ultimately, you know, if I ask my doctor to please make me dinner, she says no. I don't know why, but, you know, like those daily choices and things that we do are the responsibility of ourselves. Yeah. And we need to start thinking about each and every one of us as a doctor for ourselves, our own bodies, thinking about what choices we need to be making. And then I think that will alleviate some of the stress on the system, and doctors will have a little bit more time to spend with patients who have gone through that part and now are at the edge and need more, right? They need more information. They don't know, or they're, you know, beyond their, abilities as a person who's not trained in medicine, right? Yep. But we should all be trained in caring for ourselves. Part of the Umbrella Project in schools is kids learning that what happens under your umbrella really matters for your well-being, and what those different things are, and what choices we can make within that to improve our own well-being.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I was going to ask you, you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that you're seeing more and more kids coming in with mental health issues, much more than you would have expected. And I was going to ask you why, but I guess your answering is the stress and our diets and our lifestyle. And when I say our lifestyle, it's the lifestyle that adults are choosing and then putting onto our kids. Yeah.
Well, I think there's that piece, definitely, just overall health and lifestyle choices. But I also think that the umbrella effect is a metaphor to understand all the big things we know about mental health in a very easy to understand way. So we talk about stress like the rain in life, and we talk about coping skills like pieces of an umbrella that weave together to protect you from stress. So one of the big research-based predictors of whether or not we're going to be thriving is the ratio of rain to umbrella that we have. So the ratio of how much stress we have to how many coping skills we have. So if you have a cocktail umbrella in a monsoon, that's not going to do much for you. You're going to be pretty unhappy underneath that cocktail umbrella. If you have a golf umbrella and it's sprinkling, you're going to be doing pretty well, right? So I think that's the other piece with children's mental health right now, is that the ratio of rain to umbrella is off for a lot of kids. We're not spending a lot of really intentional time teaching coping skills or focusing on them. And at the same time, kids have this extra layer of stress in their lives, from a range of different things, but, from technology, from social media. I remember getting phone calls at home with my long curly cord around the corner and hearing maybe that I had missed a party, right? Maybe I hadn't been invited. I might get that phone call once a year. And that was so stressful for me. But now, kids, and I have teenagers and a toddler, but the teenagers, they know every single time they've missed a hangout, their friends are posting. They all look so happy. They know every party that's happened. They can look at pictures and decide if the party they had or the other one that was going on that night looked more fun. Like, it's just absolutely this really intense layer of rain in kids' lives. And at the same time, we're not doing what we need to do to make sure that kids build the skills that they need to cope with that.
Yeah. So what are some of the skills that we can help teach our kids and that we'll be able to teach our kids by reading The Umbrella Effect with them?
Yeah, well, so we talk about 18 different coping skills, all the big ones from the research. And actually, as a great starting point, if you pick up a copy of the Umbrella Effect book, we actually have an assessment that allows you to learn what all the skills are. Each skill has 3 questions. So you can do your own umbrella assessment as a parent. You could do one for your child and really get a sense of what all the skills are and where each of your skills is at. But the skills are a broad range of things that you might have already heard about in schools, because we tend to, pick out a skill, teach it, but never really talk about how it all comes together. So things like empathy, self-compassion, a growth mindset, cognitive flexibility, autonomy. There's all different skills. And when you really think about your child and when you know what the umbrella skills are, you can really start to see what their strengths are and what might be holding them back. So, for example, something like cognitive flexibility is the skill that allows us to pivot and adapt quickly to change. So if we think about COVID and going in and out of online learning and having to really change things drastically for kids, the kids who really struggle with cognitive flexibility found that extremely hard. But there are lots of ways that we can help to notice that and build those specific skills in our kids. I think one of the problems that parents have actually with their mental health right now is we're trying to do too much for our kids. We learn so much about what can be done, right? And we're just kind of like working so hard to try to do all the things. But actually you can get really, really focused on what your specific child needs. For that child who doesn't have a lot of cognitive flexibility, just putting that piece back into their umbrella and intentionally building that skill for them has huge impacts on what they're willing to take on in life, what they're willing to try and do, and how they're coping. And then when kids are willing to take on more challenges are what build skills. So then they start to build more and more of their skills, right? There's kind of a snowball effect in that positive direction. So I think there's a lot that can be done when it comes to building some of these skills.
Yeah. Now, when you use a word, if I were to pick up a book, I might get intimidated by reading a word like cognitive
flexibility. Yeah.
But what we're talking about is kids who are having trouble transitioning, right? Going from one thing to another. So you don't have to get freaked out. You already know that. You know, if you're listening to this, don't get freaked out. I can't do it with cognitive flexibility. Your kid has a really hard time putting down the crayons and going on to the next task. And we can help our kids build that skill.
Yeah. And I'm sure because, you do this for a living and you talk about reading and words. It's amazing the words that you can give even very young kids. Our curriculum runs in hundreds of schools now, and the reports we get home are amazing and hilarious from kids. They can definitely grasp self-compassion and cognitive, some of the bigger skills, along with kindness and empathy and some of the easy ones, right? Mm-hmm. But they can really start to understand these seemingly difficult concepts as soon as they learn what they are. So we use a lot of books in our curriculum, kids books that talk about these different skills, and we recommend them to parents because just learning what a skill is allows you to see yourself using that skill when you are. So I'll use the example of grit. I remember early on when the curriculum was first in its infancy, a parent sent us a message saying, my son learned about grit in school this week, and he was in junior kindergarten, so a 5-year-old. Came home and went to hockey that night, and then came home from hockey and said, "Mom, I used so much grit at hockey tonight. I fell down so many times, and I just kept getting back up." And, just from learning what that thing is, that child was able to identify that extra layer of things instead of coming home and saying, Mom, I'm a horrible skater. I don't want to do hockey next year. Right. It's like, oh, I used grit. Like that's an important skill and I was using it. Mm-hmm. Right. And just learning those things, big word or small, mm-hmm. allows kids to see how powerful that layer of skills actually is. I mean, it is the layer of things that allows them to learn. It allows them to read. We know kids need, a growth mindset, and they need self-compassion to read. They need to be kind to themselves instead of getting frustrated every time they make a mistake, right? Yeah. And in turn, reading is challenging and it allows them to dive in and build those skills. That everything that they do is woven in with their layer of coping skills. Yeah. So.
And what a wonderful gift that kid got. Mm-hmm. Learning about grit. I mean, imagine this poor kid giving up on hockey living in Canada. I mean, life is over.
Yeah, social hit to the,
Now, the umbrella effect seems like a great companion to families that are reading with their kids every night. It's a great way, I'm thinking it's just a great way to make your read aloud moments a bit more intentional. We love sitting down and being spontaneous. What do you want to read tonight? My son, my daughter, pick your favorite book. Okay, you want me to read that for the 500th time? Awesome, no problem. But you can also use the umbrella effect, I'm imagining, to be more selective. Oh, today I want to read a book with my kids that will help us get into a conversation about empathy or about grit or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you know what all the skills are, they really start to make themselves known in your life. So in books is a great example, but you can even take it a step further. So if you're reading a book about empathy and you notice, oh yeah, actually that's empathy. You can tell your kids, oh, we were just talking about empathy. We go through one skill a month. So if you're a parent who wants to kind of take a slower cadence and just learn about skills in a very digestible way, you can always follow us on social media and learn about one skill a month. And then you can find that skill, say you're reading, okay, that book's about empathy. Isn't that cool? And then you can take it a step further. If that's a strong skill for your child, you can say, you know what? I actually noticed that's something you use a lot of empathy, and you can share examples of when they do it. Because we know Professor Leah Waters out of Australia has done a lot of research on strengths-based parenting, which basically means knowing what your child's strong coping skills are and then pointing it out to them. And we know that lowers anxiety and depression in teenagers. We know that it helps everybody to use those coping skills more when they're faced with a challenge. So if you know that, you're very strong at empathy, you're much more likely to use that skill when faced with a challenge than if it's just, in your environment, but nobody's ever really pointed it out to you. So as you're reading with your kids, as you're noticing the different coping skills, when you find one that's strong in your child, point it out to them. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, you know what? That book about hockey and the kid who kept falling down on the ice, I saw you do that, the other day in this. I think you have a really strong grit. And then they'll start to associate themselves with that coping skill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you said to me before we started recording is life is like learning your own brain. Can you expand a little bit on that and what you mean by that?
Sure. Well, I think when we started talking about that, we were talking about ADHD. And I find that the school system is designed to teach everybody the same. There's one teacher, there's 30 students. Of course, that teacher can work extremely hard to make it unique for everyone. But ultimately, the school system wants us to have everybody to have the same kind of brain, and that makes it easy to teach. But actually, every person's brain is incredibly unique. If there's anything I've learned in my 20 years of practice, in medicine, it's that each person is so different and needs different things. So sometimes, when I'm working with somebody who has ADHD, for example, a diagnosis of ADHD, or even who just struggles with concentration, for some kids, that might be improved by sitting quietly for 5 minutes before they have to go into class or before they write a test. And for some kids, they may thrive when they run around the school twice, when they're, to get some energy out before they have to sit down and write a test. We each operate very uniquely. Some kids are highly influenced by, whether they eat or not, before they have to do something difficult. And the process of learning your own brain is a really cool one. And it kind of eliminates labels and other things that your child might get stuck on, and instead allows them to think of themselves as a unique person and learner and enjoy the process of like, what makes me thrive? What do I need? This person needs this. I need this. It's okay. We're all different. But the more we can set up a system where kids can learn autonomously to control their own environment, the better they do. So, another example of that, I remember I was working with a family who, their child was really struggling to do creative writing in class. I think he was in grade 3. And, the solution for the school was that they were going to try to get a desk out in the hallway for him so that when they were doing creative writing, he could focus, because he was saying it's too loud in the classroom. I can't do it. And so, as I was working with this family, I was thinking, before we put a desk out in the hallway for this child, what if we work on working in a noisy environment? What if you took him out to a coffee shop a few nights a week and you did homework there and you told him, you're working on the skill of being able to tune out the background noise and still get your work done. But it's fun. And, you can get a hot chocolate and you can sit there. You can bring your work too. You could do it together. And so, the parent did this and actually ended up being really successful in keeping them in the classroom. And why I really like that is because getting a desk out in the hallway is not in that child's control, but learning the skill of working in a noisy environment is, right? So the ability to switch the power and control back into the hands of the child is really important, as much as possible.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I think all those choices make such a huge difference. Like, okay, this is me. This is what I need. I like to work in the library. I like to work in the coffee shop. I like to, I like to go for a run before a big day. I like to meditate. I like to, right? And then we can really, again, back to the like where control actually lies, we can start to give kids their own coping skills that are in their control. Yeah.
I was sharing with Dr. Jenn, a naturopath helped my son a great deal with his extra energy in middle school. And, she prescribed a meatball for him.
Nice.
When we noticed that his attention really started to lag in our conference with the doctor, she suggested, why don't we change your diet, stop with the sugary cereals and maybe some protein in the morning. And he's like, protein? I don't like eggs. And I'm like, but you like meatballs? And he goes, yeah, I love meatballs. I go, you can have a meatball for breakfast? What do you mean? I can't have a meatball for breakfast. You can have a meatball for breakfast. And he did. For a year, he had a meatball for breakfast, had that protein bar in school from when it started.
Excellent.
And it changed the trajectory of his career at that particular school. So, I think we could talk all day about this because I really think that we're too quick because of a lot of the stress we put on ourselves. We're all, as parents, we're looking for that quick fix. We're looking for that, I can go to the doctor and I can get a pill and that's going to make everything better automatically. And it doesn't. It might change things, but it's not going to, going.
Sometimes it is. Just to qualify, there are absolutely, I see it like a path that you're walking through where, you go through the things that you can control first. And there are lots of kids that I highly recommend that they take a medication, for example, for ADHD, because that's what they needed. But they went through the other steps first to determine if that was the right thing for them.
Right.
And then you can, when they get there, that's great.
Yeah.
Right. But we sort of, I don't want to.
What? No,
I'm not anti-medication.
No, but I mean, that's why you're a doctor and I'm just a dopey guy in my basement doing a podcast. Cause it's like, what I was trying to say very inarticulately is do this stuff first. It may seem harder. It does take more time. It does take discipline. It does take the parents' involvement in helping. But if you can make these changes, it can really make a huge difference in your kid's life and in your life too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Dr. Jenn, where can people go to find out more about the Umbrella Effect, the Umbrella Project, and more about you?
Well, you can check out our website, which is umbrellaproect.co. There's a book page there if you're interested in picking up the book. We also have the Umbrella Assessment online there. So the website is kind of a central place that you can access all of those tools. And you can also check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Umbrella PJCT. I put out regular parenting tips and, things from the current world that are going on in our kids' lives that we can slowly start to learn and tweak together. We definitely give book recommendations as we see books that are related to the different skills. So lots to learn there.
Awesome. We've had a really fascinating time and a fun time speaking about the Umbrella Effect with Dr. Jennifer Forristal. Dr. Jenn, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun to chat with you.
Please be sure to join us for our next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest would be PJ Hoover. She'll be here to celebrate her new YA nonfiction book called Problem Solvers. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our guest, Dr. Jenn Forristal. Please be sure to check out the Umbrella Effect. I also want to thank our sponsors, Sarah Belisa Tucker. Be sure to check out the Adventures of Harry and Friends series. We also want to thank Andrea and Gabe Olson. You're going to love their beautiful new book. It's called A Little Love. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q, Jordan Saley, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.